Welcome back to Attorneys on Call. We have a special guest in studio with us, Susan Walston, who has been represented by the Whitley Law Firm. And as Bob said, many, many years you've been represented by Bob and the Whitley Law Firm. Welcome to the program.
Thank you. I appreciate being here.
I'm going to let Bob just sort of introduce you again, and thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Well, Drew, I met Susan really through one of the paralegals that works for me, was a friend of her and her family, and I heard that she had called and wanted to meet with us. She'd been in a real bad wreck. This was weeks and months after the wreck.
Okay.
And we went to her home. That was where I first met her. I believe it was your mom's home.
It's my mom's house.
She was not able to stay. She lived by herself in her own home and needed assistance for quite a while. And her wreck was really different than many. All wrecks are a little bit different, but she leaves home to go to work like she does every day. It was a work day. It was during the Christmas holidays.
Okay.
5 years ago, or
6 years.
6 years ago.
Okay.
And she lives in a little subdivision that has a kind of a main road outside of the subdivision.
Okay.
She pulls up to a stop sign, but she has to stop and before she can enter that roadway. And she does it the same way that day as she always does. And it's one of those stop signs where it's back a little bit, so you have to stop twice.
Okay, sure.
And she stopped the second time, makes the decision she's going to make a left turn.
Okay.
And she is struck in a violent collision by a deputy sheriff's vehicle that we later learned, and we're going to talk about how we learned it, was traveling almost 100 miles an hour.
Wow.
At the point of impact.
Okay.
And had been traveling down that road, that two-lane road, in a residential area, even at a speed excess than 100 as he was approaching that intersection.
Okay.
And he was on the way to an accident scene. It wasn't like a medical emergency. It wasn't a crime going on. It was an accident. And they needed some help with traffic.
Okay.
There was a conflict about whether he had his siren and blue light on, and probably had his lights on. I think there was some conflicting evidence about siren. And it was a miracle. I mean, I think God was with both of those people that day, that neither one of them were killed, and because they were basically a head-on collision at that speed. Susan, because she had come out from a stop sign, you know, there were some of the investigating officers who thought that she was at fault.
Okay.
Despite the fact that this guy was driving 100 miles an hour going to a wreck scene. So the first day I met with her, we went to the wreck scene, and did I drive my car or did we go in your car?
No, you drove.
Okay, and you were a passenger.
Yes.
And I drove from, the exact way she did so that I could see what she could see.
Okay.
And, we had a little bit of an argument out there, but it was a friendly argument about, she maintained that she did not see that vehicle before she pulled out.
Okay.
And I was doing the math a little bit, and the engineering in my head, as feeble as that might be, and it just seemed like it had to have been in her sight when she left. I said, Susan, I bet you that you don't remember seeing it, because oftentimes that is the case.
You forget seeing it. Okay.
If something does not present itself as a danger, it doesn't register.
Okay.
She said, no, Bob.
I did not see him.
Did not see him.
I did not see him.
Okay.
And but you got to remember, Drew, when we in this case, we hired an accident reconstruction to do some calculating.
Okay.
First of the speed, and they had a data recording device in that vehicle.
Okay.
The sheriff's deputy.
In the sheriff's
so we were
deputy
able
car.
to get. That's
Okay.
why we were certain of the speed.
Okay.
And the distance, as we've talked on the show, when you're going 100 miles an hour, you're going about 150 feet a second. So if it takes Susan 2 to 4 seconds to make the decision to leave and get out there, in 4 seconds that sedan would have traveled 600 feet. And we finally, the math and the experts kind of reached the same conclusion that Susan told me the first day.
She never saw it.
She never saw it. It was not in her line of sight.
Mm-hmm.
But Susan, I don't want to do all the talking about your wreck. Tell him about your job, because she works at
Butterball.
Okay.
turkey plant.
And you've worked there how long?
I had only been there 4 months permanent when I had my accident.
Okay.
4 months.
4-time permanent, like full-time?
Full-time.
Okay.
I had started out temporary in May,
Okay.
and this was in December. So in August, I became a full-time employee, and I'm customer service for them. So I sell the turkeys,
Okay.
and I love my job. And that was where I was headed, was to work.
She's good at her job too.
When
Thank you.
you were seriously injured, you talk a little bit about, your injuries and what you've gone through medically, because, I mean, we were talking off camera earlier, and you've been through the ringer.
I've been through a lot, but thank God I'm still here. If I hadn't been on my son's truck, I don't believe I would be here. If I'd have been on my car, I think I would probably be dead. But God orchestrated all that. So I was on the way to work, and I pulled out from that stop sign. I saw a truck coming this way, but I thought he was pulling into a driveway. So I thought, well, I can go. And when I pulled out, the blue lights caught my eye, but it was too late. There he was.
There
he
he
was
was.
at my door. And my last thought was maybe I can get to the ditch. There was a huge ditch in front of me. Maybe I can get to the ditch. And that's all I remember.
Wow.
I don't remember the crash. I don't hear anything. So thank God I don't go through all that.
You woke up in the hospital.
No, I woke up and actually it's still in the truck.
Still in the truck.
There was somebody behind me. I'm not sure, it was a woman. And she was snatching my jewelry off, and I thought, well, I'll never see that again. But you just have, it's crazy the thoughts you have. But, and then I heard them say, we'll have to cut her out of the vehicle, that the dash is laying on her legs. And they were bouncing it up and down. And I thought, well, it's not my legs. But I looked around, I thought, oh my God, what happened in here?
Wow.
Everything was broken, and I was sitting in the middle of the truck. I thought, how did I get over
How'd you
here?
get over there? Wow. Well, tell me how you came to call Bob in the Whitley Law Firm.
My sister and Sandy Rose, I'm not sure what her last name is now, had been friends for a long time. They go to a gym together.
Okay.
And my sister said, you need to talk to Sandy. So Sandy came and talked to me. And then, of course, Bob came to my mom's house. And at that time, my mom was 80. And Bob came in and sat down, and Mama said, oh, you are much better looking in person than you are on TV.
I hope everybody heard that.
Oh my God, my mom is flirting with this attorney at 80 years old, but they came in and talked to me, and they were very kind and told me how it would proceed and what would happen. And I just turned my case over to them. In fact, I turned my life over to them because I had no other options, and I wanted to make sure that this didn't happen to somebody else.
And I bet you just wanted to get your health back and go back to work, probably.
I wanted to go back to work. Everybody said, why aren't you on disability? Well, I'm not disabled. I can still work. I think that keeps you healthy, and I love my job, and I didn't want to be home every day. I think that if you are truly disabled and you can't work, that's one thing. But if you can work, and I could work, I go every day. So, and I love my job. And I'm
But
not
you've had
disabled.
how many surgeries since then?
7.
7. Wow. But tell me about your relationship with Bob and the Whitley Law Firm in terms of guiding through that legal rigmarole for laymen like us. I mean, we can't even imagine all the stuff. That's why you have to have an experienced firm leading you through that process, right?
Well, I have a brain injury, and that has taken a lot of my confidence away, and a lot of my can't comprehend things. So I literally had to turn my life over to them, and they took very good care of me.
Drew, our first challenges in this case was, of course, that stop sign that Susan had come through, and the fact that some of the investigating officers thought the wreck was either her fault completely or at least both of their faults.
Okay.
And in North Carolina, you've got the contributory negligence issue. Then you had a law enforcement, and there's certain rules that they have certain privileges when they're operating on the road.
When they're on duty, or?
Yes,
Okay.
and I think the second segment of this or the third segment of the show will kind of go into more details.
Okay.
But we knew we were going to have a battle on our hands, and we hired what we think is the best accident engineer And in her case, we also, hired a brain injury rehab expert to make sure we understood her injuries and that she had received the correct treatment. We also hired it's an unusual name. It's a human factors expert.
Interesting.
And he's an engineer with a psychology degree. And I'll never forget, as he described Susan's, drive from work that day to work, that intersection was, in his words, her window to the world. Because whenever she left her home, she went to that same stop sign, whether it was to go to the grocery store, to go to church, or to go to her job. So that was her window to the world. And one of the things he explained to us, which made me conclude that Susan was telling me exactly the right thing the first day when she said she didn't see it, is that if we have a stop sign that we regularly come to, we begin to create a danger zone.
Okay.
Distances that we know based on the speed limit that cars would be in, and we got to wait for them.
Okay.
But we also develop the ability, if they're outside of that zone, it's safe for us to go.
Okay.
And he helped us with a whole lot of that. And Drew, this was a residential neighborhood. I don't know how many driveways there were along the way. It was an early morning. There was a daycare center right down the road. We hired a law enforcement expert who talked about how badly the safety rules had been violated in view of the speed and where he was going to and the neighborhood, and it was just, and we needed every bit of that. The insurance company, then you had this thing, or you have this in North Carolina, legal concept, sovereign immunity. And it means, and our law enforcement people need to have some immunity in performing their jobs. They don't need to be looking over their shoulder as they're protecting us.
Right.
But the test required that if they were guilty of willful or wanton or gross negligence, that would take them out of that protection. And that protection also applied to their insurance.
Okay.
But Ann Oxner, who worked diligently on this case, the appellate, because we had a summary judgment hearing a day in Wayne County Courthouse that lasted all day, and the whole case was thrown out.
Okay.
Because of the sovereign immunity, because of the contributory negligence, because of the insurance policy not applying. And so we then had to take that ruling to the North Carolina Court of Appeals.
Okay.
And again, I'm going to save some of that for Ann, but I do want to say this, because she won't say this. She just did a great job. She laid it out. We kid Ann about being kind of the librarian nerd in our office a little bit, because she's so diligent about her research and the legal terms and the words, and I kid her a lot about it, but I'll tell you what, we needed it, and Susan needed it, and the Court of Appeals, and it's a wonderful decision. It starts out even with the headlines of the news article that covered it, about this speeding law officer, and Ann was not only up against the insurance companies in our case and the lawyers in our case, but then municipalities and counties from all over the state threw their briefs in because they didn't want the exposure that they might have on this willful and wanton negligence.
Well,
and I want to say this, and Susan believes this too. Law enforcement, they need to have a little bit more freedom than most people to do what they do in their job. They put themselves in a dangerous position for our benefit. But they're rules, and you just can't be careless and reckless and in willful disregard of the safety of others using the highway.
Well, we're so glad that you're here and that things have worked out. And Ann's going to be here in just a moment. We're going to take a short break. Back with more of Attorneys on Call.